Thanks for joining us for part 2 of our interview with writer-arranger Robert Sterling. You can find part 1 in the blog section of discoverworship.com. Let's join this segment in progress. So, a bit of trivia about you. Speaking of a big artist, you work with Mel Torme. What's with that?
Back that decade when I was doing jingles in Dallas, I had a particular advertising agency client that wanted to get somebody big for some of their commercials. Matter of fact, it was a commercial for Tuesday Morning Gift Stores.
Oh yeah,
and they're still
Love
around.
That place.
Yeah, and he said, "I want to get Mel Torme to sing our jingle," and subsequently after Mel Torme, he got B.J. Thomas, and he got Janie Fricke. So I got to work with all of them, and then later I got to work with my idol, Bill Champlin, sang one for us too.
Of Chicago.
Yeah, and but yeah, he said we're going to get Mel Torme, and I said, yeah, good luck with that one, because Mel Torme was on the air at the time with that Charlie commercial back in the 1980s. That perfume, I think, and but. This guy my client could not be stopped. When he wanted something, he got it. And he booked Mel Torme. We cut the track as a big band thing, and we cut the track in Dallas and hopped on a plane and flew out to L.A., met Mel Torme and his agent at what was then United Western Recording, which is a really famous studio out in L.A., and walked in. He was the supreme pro, super nice guy, and we got to work with him, and I still remember, because I don't think I was even 30. I think I was maybe 29, 28 at the time, and he said, well, how do you want me to sing this? And I had the wisdom. God came down and just said, shut up, Robert. Don't say anything. And but basically I said to him, I said, I want you to be Mel Torme.
Right.
I would never suppose I could tell you what to sing. And he was this wonderful gentleman, and he just knocked it out of the park. And I mean, in 15 minutes.
Wow.
It was nothing to him, because he's a real musician. He can read music, and the putting notes on the page didn't scare him.
Yeah.
And he was terrific, and we just kind of chatted. And the worst part of the whole thing is, did I think to bring a camera? No, you'd have had to have a real camera with real film, and my agency guy and me, neither one of us thought to do that, and I have no photographic evidence of it other than I've got the recordings, but of Mel Torme. I learned my lesson after that. I've got pictures of B.J. Thomas and Bill and those people. So.
Wow, what a great story. So as the years have gone on, obviously the music business has changed dramatically.
Yes.
The big choral music companies have changed. And so recently you've launched your own online distribution of your choral product. Tell us about that.
I've had a website for more than a decade that it was originally established just to stay in touch with people who followed my work, and to have an archive listing so that music ministers who were hunting for music from my past, that it would help them find it. And I wrote a blog there, and I still do. It's robertsterlingmusic.com. It's really easy. I was lucky to get that. And so I wasn't doing any commerce there. It was just information. And a few years ago, I began to sell orchestral arrangements that I had done there for mostly hymn arrangements for symphonic orchestra. And those were easy downloads and that kind of thing. But I didn't think the world was ready to buy choral music as downloads.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Because Discover Worship, it's been an uphill climb for us.
Yes.
But gradually, the marketplace has embraced it. I think, obviously, having everybody shopping on Amazon, now they click and buying. It's so much easier. Kindle books, Netflix. People now understand the immediacy of the downloadable environment. So,
and you're absolutely right. And had it not been for guys like you, and to like Praise Charts and people like that have kind of plowed that ground, I don't think I could have gone there. And so I finally realized that as I'm getting older and crankier, and I'm a natural born curmudgeon, I was saying no to a whole lot more opportunities from the publishing companies than I was saying yes to, because I didn't like a lot of the music that was being offered me to be arranged. And so if you ever see my name on something in the last 10 years, it's because I consciously said I like this song well enough
Right.
to work on it.
Well, that's important because you're protecting your brand.
Well,
you know?
yeah, I had to explain that to some people
Yeah.
at one point, why I was being difficult. And it's not that I enjoy being difficult, it just comes easily to me. And so I had this stockpile. I had begun doing these arrangements, and I had this stockpile. And I'm not faulting the mainstream publishers. Don't misunderstand, because I still work with some of them. I still write. I'm working this week on a chart for Hal Leonard Shawnee Press, who I've got great friends there. That's where I began my publishing career, was with Shawnee Press back in 1978 or 9. They have their way of doing business, which they're doing it the way they have to do. And they put enormous amounts of music out 2 or 3 times a year. You try to fill 1 or 2 slots of their catalog, and a writer cannot make a living doing that. I'm not a super prolific writer, but I could not find homes for a lot of the things I was writing, because they're so limited in the available slots. And so I thought I'll make my own availability. At the time, finally reached that place where the technology and the customer base reach that place where they go, okay, we're willing to download. Matter of fact, I even did a quick survey of about 200 music ministers that were Facebook friends of mine, going, would you be willing to just download a choral anthem and print your own copies? And the responses that I got were about 80% were going, yes, we totally understand, that's just the way of the world now. It may not be my favorite. Some of them were going, some of them were enthusiastic about it. They're going, we like being able to buy something immediately, and we have it on our desktop in an instant, that we don't have to wait for it to be delivered. So I think that may be some of the younger guys. There was a group of guys who say, yes, we understand it's the way of the world now, and we will do it. We would prefer to buy hard copies when we can, but that's not always possible. And there's a reluctant kind of acceptance to the new reality. And then there was a handful of guys that said, no, we still want to buy hard copies. So this is a very new venture for me, and so I opted to go with the 80%, to aim for them. And maybe I will try to offer hard copies in the future. It's a very expensive proposition.
Yeah, it is.
And the whole process is very expensive. I mean, making the demos, as you well know, that's the single most expensive part of the process, and a lot of customers don't understand just how expensive that is. And so it's a very new venture. I began it in the spring of this year.
How many pieces do you currently have?
I just released number 12 and 13, I think. So I have 13 anthems.
Some of them are hymns, some of them are original compositions of yours.
Right, yeah. There's a group of hymn arrangements, there's a group of original compositions, and I have 3 different product lines that I'm going to try to develop. The main one is the traditional choral thing, which I call the Sanctuary series, but because I also have always written, for lack of a better term, pop-oriented contemporary music as well, I have a gospel series. Matter of fact, one of the ones that I'm about to record, I haven't done it yet, it's my next group, is a song I wrote with Reggie Stone.
Oh, what song?
Called God Alone.
Okay.
It's when Reggie and I have written, and most of the things that are in your catalog that I've contributed to have been co-writes with Reggie, because I just went to him one time. He came to me, I think, with a tune, and I wrote a lyric. Or I went to him with a lyric and he wrote a tune, but it's been back and forth like that over the years. And we had some real success with those songs too. One of our songs called "Washed Away." No, that's not it. I'm blanking right now. It'll hit me in a little bit. Is being sung by lots and lots of choirs that we co-wrote with Claire Cloninger. And then Luke Garrett cut a couple of our songs on that right before he passed away, and that I've got that material available online, the finished material. But so I've got the traditional, the gospel, and then I write a little bit for high school and college choir.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so I call that the concert series. I've got 2 pieces in that right now. That'll be the hardest to develop. I mean, it really is. I'm doing those pieces just because I want to. I don't know that I'll ever make money on them until and unless somebody discovers them.
Well, building a catalog certainly is a way to get discovered, because you have to have kind of critical mass.
Right, and I
to
haven't
get
reached
people's
that
attention.
yet. A lot of it, I'm not telling you. You could probably educate me totally on how long it will take just to get people to take you seriously, to think, oh, that he's for real, that he's not going away, that there's enough material here, like you say, a critical mass that makes it worth my time to go and even visit the website. And
But I think what you're doing with periodic blogs and emails and debuting new music, it'll take time. But people who love and respect your approach, both songwriting and arranging, I think will love going to robertsterlingmusic.com.
Right.
And then in addition to that, you also offer songwriting commission. So if somebody wants to commission you for a special event.
Right.
And then I also found it interesting that you're working on musical theater projects. Share a little bit about that.
I've always liked musical theater, even when I didn't know I liked it. When I was a kid, my mother drugged me to a couple of movie musicals when I was a kid, and I thought, I'm going to hate these. The Music Man and The Sound of Music when I was just a kid, and I went,
I probably know all the words to both of those.
they're 2 of the great American musicals.
Yeah.
And I thought, these are really fun. And I never realized how much I liked it, because as a teenager, like you probably got into rock and roll and jazz and whatever. But I began writing, churches in the 1980s began doing these really large, dramatic presentations. And I was a member of a church that did that in Texas, and was asked to write a song or 2 for them. And I began to realize, just watching it, trying to discover what works and what doesn't work, and noticing the power of theater in music, this live moment where a character, somebody the audience has grown to like, breaks into song and sings something important. You're going, this is powerful, really powerful. And so I had an idea right after we came here and I got signed to Word. I wanted to write an Easter musical, but I didn't want it to be the cantata type, where there's a little bit of narration and a little bit of acting and a little bit of singing, and you go along and stop everything for a song. I wanted all the songs to come from
to carry the story.
The story. I didn't even know I just knew that's what felt right. I didn't know why. And I wrote a musical called The Choice, and it's flawed, but it at least had an original storyline. It even had a romance in it, which I thought, my whole thinking was that the audience has to know and like these people if they're going to care about what they sing. And so I wanted them to like my characters. And that was my first attempt at it. I've got the ones on my website are much further developed than that. I was hired a few years ago to write a wholly original 2-hour work. They wanted something that they were going, we want Broadway. And so I said, all right then. And this is a church in Novi, Michigan, Assemblies of God Church in Novi, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And I wrote a musical called God Bless Us Everyone. It was based on an idea that I cooked up with a co-writer, Deborah Craig Clare, and it was basically Tiny Tim from the Dickens Christmas Carol as an adult. What happened to him?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, well, and that's Deborah's idea. She gets full credit for that. And then the other full musical I've got on there is one that started out as a youth musical for Word called Foreign to Y'all. Having grown up in Texas, it was what if the Christmas story happened in the Old West? And so I took basically the Luke 2 story and set it in the Old West. And so the shepherds are cowboys. Gabriel is this combination of the Lone Ranger and Johnny Cash. All the songs in it are salutes to various sorts of country and or Western songs. So there's Western swing. There's kind of there's no bro country because that was not invented back then, but it's traditional kinds of. There's a kind of Willie Nelson crazy kind of song in the new. And then I expanded this show. It was a very short show back in 1992 when I first wrote it. And then about 10 years ago, I thought it was always too short. And people loved doing it because people like dressing up like cowboys.
In Texas, they love it.
Well,
actually, that's how they dress.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, I used to get, I got emails and letters from people going, we've done this with our adults want to do it, not the youth. The adults want to do it so it was being done as dinner theater.
Right.
So I expanded the show and wrote more songs, and so that it became more of a real musical theater offering, a 2-act offering, if you want to do it that way. And now that's a licensed program too. But I just love musical theater. It's got a real power that regular songwriting doesn't necessarily have, and to reach people,
because it's an embodiment.
Absolutely.
They can touch and see.
Right.
And feel the character.
Exactly.
On stage.
And you can lead people to your point of view without hitting them over the head. There's no preaching in musical theater. It's not good to preach in musical theater.
No crying in baseball.
Right.
And no preaching in musical
Well, you
theater.
shouldn't. I mean, I think churches are guilty of thinking we've got to preach in our musical theater presentations. And my theory is that you should use them as it's the outside rim of a very large funnel, and you need to use them to get people interested to come in, and then bring them into conversations, and then you draw them to specific theological truths, through preaching. That's what preaching, I think, is really great at. That's what music doesn't necessarily, it's not the best way to do that. Music needs to ask the questions, and preaching can answer them. And so I love musical theater, and it's very expensive, and it's very time consuming to write. God Bless Us Everyone, the Tiny Tim sequel. I worked on it for 2 years.
Wow.
Almost nonstop. I did little jobs in the meantime, but from the time I started to the time it got premiered, and then I completely rewrote it, and that was 2 years. And now I'm rewriting it again with a Hollywood guy that is interested in trying to do a film version of it. So we'll see. That's a super long shot.
Well, for those of you who've been wondering what Robert Sterling's been up to, new website, new orchestrations, new arrangements, songs that if you need him to write a special song for a special occasion, he accepts commissions, musical theater, and then also he's got a couple of books available, including this one, The Craft of Christian Songwriting, that just does a delightful job in equipping and inspiring people to use their musical and lyrical talents for the Lord. So I commend this to you if that's your interest. Robert, in closing, some encouragement to our choir directors, to our worship leaders who are out there working diligently for the kingdom using music. Just some words of encouragement to them.
I think I'm not telling them anything they don't know to say that these are difficult times for music ministry in church. Music tastes have changed so much, and there's so much pressure to be hip and trendy. And I would encourage them to make sure that whatever music they're doing, that they're really examining the words that they're singing. I also think that we're re-entering a time where patrons of good music are going to be very important to the church and to people like myself who write music for the church. If we want good music to continue to be written for the church, quality music, then somebody's going to have to pay for it, and without necessarily
recouping their
investment.
Yeah.
They need to do it for the love of, and that's. They need to be amateurs in that regard. They need to do it because they love it. That's what amateur means. And but it's a difficult time because music ministry is being torn in so many different ways, and music ministers are being expected to deliver a really cool, hip worship service, and then a traditional worship service, and then whatever else. And it's very, very difficult. And all that to say, I just always thank these people because without them, I don't have a voice. what I write, I'm not a singer. I'm not much of a singer. I can't go out like some of these folks and do concerts and everything. So without choirs that will sing my music, I have no voice. And so, and I know it's a lot of work, but I do think that the evidence is there that a choir is worth the effort, that it creates community, it strengthens a church to have a good choir. You find some of your strongest church supporters sitting in the choir.
Right.
And I've been in choirs, and it's a good, healthy thing for everybody involved. So it's worth the effort. And I thank all the music ministers that have sung my music, continue to sing it, and thank their choir members. It's like I always, when I communicate with choir members, I beg them to tell their choir, thank you from me, because I need those people. We need these. I think the church needs those people. I think it's a very important part of a church's ministry.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you, Robert.
You're
Go
very
to
welcome.
robertsterling.com, robertsterlingmusic.com.
Thank
Check out the new music from Robert. Check out what we have at Discover Worship. And for you worship leaders and worship pastors and choir directors, thank you.
Thank you.